Hi, and welcome to the 2020-2021 School Safety Review. All right. First of all, we need to start off with what every classroom needs. And I do have a picture of my classroom and some objects numbered here on the picture. Number one, you need a severe weather map. You need to familiarize yourself with it. Know where your class needs to go. Know where your teammates' classes are. Just have an idea. Make sure everybody is on the same page. Number two, I have a lockdown safety brochure, and I actually have just a little cheat card up here. If you can see above my telephone, it's our heightened awareness, secure your area, and lockdown. And it's just some tips to, in an emergency, help clue me in with what we need to do. But you can easily have this posted next to your door that can help you. Any of the charts that you see that have the blue box in it, the blue box is just some educational tools or some teaching tools or something for you to think about. The most important being the yellow, the orange, and the red boxes. You're going to want to make sure you are familiar with the color-coded hall map. We're going to look at that in just a minute, as well as your evacuation for fire drills, any other emergency evacuation. Know where you're going, know where your teammates are going, but also have a plan if that path is obstructed in an emergency with a secondary location. You're going to have a safety bucket, a safety bag. You have the nurse safety cards. And these are super important and super sharp looking. And in an emergency, it gives you options for how to handle seizure, anaphylaxis, asthma, all these kind of things. So make sure that's by your door. You need a door stop, and the door stop goes under your door after you've locked it. And you've locked your door easily, not having to look for keys in your classroom because you have an emergency key mounted right here at the side of your door. So a sub knows where it is, your specials teachers, all of that. Also, it's not pictured here, but you're going to want an emergency door curtain or some paper or a poster board or something that you can easily take down and cover your window in an emergency. Here's our color-coded halls. The Lee County safety team came up with this plan, and everybody is on board. All four first responders in Lee County, Opelika, Auburn, fire, first aid, police, everybody at our 911 dispatch is familiar with these color-coded halls. If somebody from Beauregard Elementary calls and says, I'm in room 101 on the green hall, they're able to pull up this document immediately and tell first responders what outside or exterior door is going to get them the closest to the emergency. And if you'll notice walking around our building, you'll see that all of our exterior doors are numbered, and that is for the ease of our first responders. So it is super important that you realize what color hall you are on at all times when calling in an emergency so we can identify you. The tiles up in the ceiling help indicate what color you are on. But again, my room is 101 on the green hall right here. In your safety bag, bucket, and folder, we're going to make sure in our safety folder we have an updated STI or Chalkable student roster and contact information on each student. You're also going to want to have any emergency care plans in here that might be needed if you're in a lockdown or an evacuation for an extended period of time, what those student needs are for safety. In that folder, you're also going to have a red and green card once you've evacuated a building. If you raise your red card, that means you are missing a student or more, and your green cards account for all of your students. So that is what stays in your folder. And your folder can stay in your safety bag. And in that bag, most of them are yellow. Some of them have changed over time. So I've also kind of changed to a backpack, a heavier set bag. But you're going to have basic first aid supplies, Band-Aids, gauze, alcohol wipes, your emergency folder, a laminated piece of white construction paper, and crayons so that you can jot quick notes down. If we are evacuated and admin needs to know how many kids are in your class for that day, you can write 18 with your crayon on the laminated paper, hold it up, and quickly we can make tabs with each teacher. And then you can wipe it and save it for the next means of communication. Things like Kleenex. You're going to have a safety t-shirt or a vest. It's a neon yellow color. Putting that on, it sets you apart from all the other adults. Somebody sees that neon color, they're going to know you're a faculty or staff member and go to the appropriate person needed. So have your shirt and or your safety vest. You can have things like coloring book, activity pages in there to help to engage students if they're sitting for a long period of time. I keep in my bucket a bag from Sam's of Dum Dum lollipops. I figure if I have those on hand for a long period of time, it also helps students to be really, really quiet when needed in an emergency. A lanyard and a whistle. Whistle helps to get people's attention quickly, but for example, at Enterprise, when the tornadoes came through and destroyed their high school, whistles can be helpful if you're under rubble and have to get somebody's attention. Bottle of water just for emergency purposes in there. If you can get more than one bottle, that's great. You'll notice that in your emergency buckets, you have diapers, children's diapers, and those can be used in a number of ways as well. One, if you have to use your emergency bucket as a restroom option, that helps to absorb any liquids in the bottom of your bucket. Or if you have a child who has a severe injury or is bleeding heavily, use it to press down on the wound to try to contain it. I keep things like rubber bands, safety pins, batteries, a flashlight. I keep my batteries in a Ziploc bag separate so they don't corrode into there. But for an injury, if you had to do the diaper on part of your body for a tourniquet and then rubber bands to hold it tightly, anything like that if you have to improvise is going to be helpful. So keep that in mind when you're stocking your safety bags and your safety buckets. Oh, another quick thing. I remember Miss Kirby saying, keep a cheap pair of sunglasses in there because in the stadium over at high school or you're outside for long periods of time, the sun's bright. It's just nice to have that. Maybe some sunscreen. Brainstorm some ideas with your grade level about other things you think you should have in these safety bags, buckets. Keep it near your door. Add it to your lesson plans. Make sure that everybody knows where they are in your classroom. When we need to evacuate for fire or other hazards, we're going to exit the building using our established procedures and how it's marked on the map, if possible. Make sure you have your safety bag and bucket with you. Pull that emergency t-shirt and vest. Know an alternative route to exit the building if your pre-planned route is blocked or there is a fire or we just know it's safer to go a different way. Complete your roll call to determine if all your students are accounted for and raise your red or green card. Assigned faculty members are sweeping bathrooms and classrooms and clearing the hallways, but the red card is very helpful if we need to look, pardon me, for a specific child. During severe weather, Your admin team is always monitoring those things, and during a tornado watch, we will make an announcement over the intercom saying, please prepare for severe weather. At that time, students typically move their backpacks to the back of their chairs. And when a weather alarm sounds, indicating that we have a tornado warning, we're quickly going to move your students to their safe place, making sure all your students are accounted for. They need to have that backpack ready when they get into the crouched position to put over their head and neck to help cover, to block things. If you're not in your classroom, a textbook, a library book, a hard dry erase board, any of these things that can protect your head and your neck from injury, clearing out any shelving, stacks of papers, anything that could fall. Make sure your kids are only 2 deep on the inside walls and as quiet as possible. Keep your cell phone near you to receive important messages if needed. Keep that safety bag and bucket at the ready, and remain in place until the weather event is past or you've been dismissed. Now, the Lee County Safety Team developed this lockdown intruder active shooter school safety alert. And we want to make sure that you understand all of the 3 levels of this plan. Number 1, heightened awareness. This means that there is a potential that there may be an unusual situation and we should just kind of be on edge. We want to have our attention on the fact that something could possibly happen. We want to follow the school's communication plan, which is remind, texts, grade level rep texts, emails, and limit our movement to and from the classroom. Kind of keep your head on a swivel when you're walking through the hall and you go by the windows. You're checking out the parking lot. You're checking out our grounds. You're looking for anything that could be unusual both in or outside of the school. Checking exterior doors if need be. Make sure that you're doing head counts on the regular. When you get a secure your area, it may or may not be by intercom. We may do this by remind and text, and it means that there's a potential threat or a danger somewhere in our community exists, and we need to be aware. We're going to want to secure within our classrooms if possible. Lock the doors, close the curtains, stay inside. We may want to move from the gym or the library or something. And we want to have our communication again at the ready. You're going to continue with instruction. You're just not going to have any movement within the school unless you are given permission by the administration team to quickly change classes or allow students to go to the bathroom. If you do not get that okay, then you remain in your classroom, and you can release via the intercom, meaning we can say our area is secure, back to heightened awareness or regularly scheduled activities. Should we go into a lockdown? This is serious business. We try not to use that word unless it's the real deal because we are in survival mode. We recognize danger. We have to take immediate action using the safest and best options for survival. We need to secure ourselves and others by using best information to decide whether we hide, run, or fight. We've got our communication plan. Hopefully, we're able to use it, and we can only release by administration, central office, or law enforcement. They will come to your door, they will knock, they will identify themselves, and they will actually have a key to your room. If you're successfully barricaded and have your doorstop under your door, even with the door unlocked, those people should not be able to get in. That's just a little helpful hint. But if you don't recognize the name or the person of the who's trying to give you the release, Simply call 911 and ask if the area has been secured, so you can make sure, and they can contact the officers on duty if need be. When we hide in our classrooms, we lock our doors, our lights are off. We put our door stop under the door. We cover the window. We barricade the entry. We prepare for intruder entry by having makeshift weapons. I myself keep a baseball bat in the corner of my room. You could use a stapler. You could use a chair should somebody breach your room. Stay extremely quiet and stay spread out, hidden, and stay there until otherwise told not to. If you have to run, we evacuate to a safer location. Stay together with your group. Call 911 when you are safe. Follow the hide protocol as best you can in this area. And when you call 911, that's letting them know where you are and who you are with if we are trying to check for accountability. If you must fight as a matter of survival, engage with the intruder and do the best that you can do to remain as safe as possible. You'll also notice on this screen that we have some helpful safety videos. I try to watch them regularly. It just keeps me in the right frame of mind for any kind of emergency situation. Let me move this right here. Adaptive mindset is terribly important. And what is it? It's the ability to recognize unexpected situations quickly, to consider various possible responses, and decide on the best one. This is essential for the ability to perform at high levels of mastery. For example, if you hear gunshots outside of your door and you need to lock your door and you're having to search for your key ring that has your house key, your car key, a set of other keys on there, in most instances, you are not going to be of right mind to be able to find those keys, get to the door, get it locked. That's why we have put the emergency keys by your door. You want to think of a possible emergency situation before it happens and decide what you should do. If you go to a concert, an outdoor concert, and people are standing and it's crowded and an emergency happens, or an active shooter is there, you should already know where your closest exits are, where you should run and hide, how you should play dead if need be. These are serious thoughts that you have to have and that you should have with children for their safety. We identified 9 possible active shooter scenarios that could happen when you're not in your classroom. Most of the times when we do drills, you're in your classroom. That's where you feel more comfortable. But a lot of things may not be comfortable. That would be during a PE transition, during lunch, a class change, the start or end of school as students are getting in and out of cars and buses. You have students inside, outside. An assembly where we're all gathered in one space together, an after school extracurricular activity, for example, a football game, extended day, a scout meeting. All of these things we should keep in consideration. What if you are in lockdown and the fire alarm goes off? In most instances, it's going to be an active shooter who pulls that fire alarm. Use your senses. Do you smell smoke? What do you hear? What do you see? Um, in most scenarios, you could probably, depending on where you are in the building, survive during a fire emergency. Um, versus an active shooter. So it may be best if you hear a fire alarm to stay put where you are. It may be best to open your window and kick the metal blind set out, and evacuate to another location. Give yourself permission to do what's best based on the information that you have at your availability. Severe weather, another thing you need to decide whether or not to chance severe weather or an active shooter situation. These are some frequently asked questions and things that you may want to think through when it comes to safety. Have I taught my students what to do if we lock down and they're in the bathroom? What if we lock down and you're not there, but your students are in your classroom unattended by another adult? What if you see someone in the hallway walking down that you don't recognize and they're not wearing any form of ID? And let me tell you, that has happened. Lee County Sheriff's Department occasionally will do a drill where they'll send plainclothes officers into your building, and they are recording how you react when you see a stranger. Do you ask who they are? Do you give them directions? Do you need to follow them back to the office so you know that they get there? All these things you need to think through. Um, Doors, students opening doors. If they're opening the door for another teacher with a Lee County tag on, and I've given them permission to go do that, or do they open the door for strangers? No, we don't want students opening doors, breaching our building. A lockdown is, or I hear gunshots nearby. What is the first, second, and third thing I do? You've heard no announcement. You've not been told to go into lockdown, but you clearly hear gunshots. The first thing you have to do is secure your room and your students. Locking your doors, sending them into their safe spaces while you call the office and or 911 using the colored hallway and room number to explain where you are that you're able to hear these gunshots. Let the school office know so they can lock down the rest of the building. These are all things we have to consider. The office then has to quickly call the high school, if possible, and alert them to go onto a lockdown or secure your area. A lockdown has been initiated. What is your communication process? We've talked about this: remind, texts, email, radios, walkie talkies, intercom, but we never release from a lockdown using an intercom. If you're said all clear, lockdown is over, do not open those doors. The only way we open those doors is if Lee County admin, central office, or first responders announce themselves and key in. What are the procedures? We talked about that for releasing from a lockdown. You've been in lockdown for a long time. Do you have what you need to follow your student's care plan if you have a child with an illness or a child with a disability? Um, those are things that you want to consider and to make sure that are in your buckets. Things that keep kids quiet. Maybe if you're really quietly reading a story to them, reminding them that everything's going to be okay and to remain calm. Does the substitute teacher on your hall know what to do in an emergency? Number one, it is your job in your lesson plans to provide safety plan information for them. You need to identify where safety things are in the classroom: your bucket, your bag, your folder, where to go, what to do. It is also your job as a teacher, if your co-teacher is out or someone else on your grade level, to go down and speak with that substitute and reiterate and teach how we go through our safety procedures. This is a simple question that a lot of people don't realize. Where's the nearest fire extinguisher, and do you know how to use it in case of a fire? What is a mass evacuation? A mass evacuation is when we evacuate the school by means of fire drill exits or your secondary or safest route, and then circle to the front to evacuate to Beauregard High School Stadium. Should there be severe weather and we're unable to safely remain in the stadium, we will evacuate to the high school gymnasium. When safely off our campus, law enforcement administration will determine if we should be transported to a further location, and that would be Providence Baptist Church for reunification with parents. If we cannot safely return to Beauregard Elementary School, reunification will take place either at the high school or Providence Baptist Church. We have support roles in place during a mass evacuation. We have runners that open gates and doors and then report to Highway 431 to block traffic and monitor students. We have office personnel that are gathering handheld radios, signage, emergency paperwork, all of that into our safety buggy. Our nurse grabs necessary medication and equipment and pulls it to the evacuation site. And we have other accountability personnel that are responsible for sweeping the rooms, the restrooms, to ensure that all students are cleared. Cafeteria workers will go to pre-K and kindergarten to help aid in their movement to the evacuation site. If you have a walkie-talkie or a handheld radio in your classroom, please bring it with you in the case of a mass evacuation. If we need to reunify with parents from Beauregard High School Stadium, we have this plan in place. When entering the stadium, our pre-K, kindergarten, and special ed load closest to the high school concession stands, while fourth grade will be closest to 431. Note that on the ground of the stadium, we have teachers or we have staff that have walkie-talkies with helpers that can pull emergency card information for students when a parent is trying to check them out from the stadium. The person with the radio will radio up to the stands where that person and their assistant will message the runner to get the student to make their way to the gates and down to the stadium ground so they can be reunified with their parents. Each grade level and team are going to be working on a different radio channel, so we have plenty of options available to get students with their parents as quickly as possible. Don't forget to have your safety bag and bucket using your laminated paper, all these kinds of things if needed. What is a mass checkout? Well, a mass checkout is unique to Beauregard Elementary School. We came up with this plan many years ago when we had a broken water main and we needed to have an early release day. So we had lots of parents coming up to the school to check out their students at one time. And in order to prevent overcrowding in the office and free up the staff to answer phones and keep emergency lines open, we set up tables in the front of the school. Each grade level has a table with someone working that table with updated emergency class rosters and cards who can use their handheld radio to call the different runners on each grade level hallway and escort students to the front of the school for checkout. Hopefully, this will keep emergency lines free and things will run smoothly and not chaotic. This is what that would look like, the emergency checkout plan, who works each table, and the different channels that we would work on. Please look this over carefully. Note if your name is listed, and see me should you have any questions. If we're in the cafeteria for an assembly, note that we have some assigned seats here, and noting that these tables each have their own exit. And when you do attend an assembly, making sure that you have your class, your emergency safety bag, and your class rosters, so that when you do exit the building, you can quickly identify who is missing and we can search if needed. In this time of COVID, we have had to come up with several different plans to remain social distanced and as safe, considering health safety. So we've come up with some different car rider plans, and to keep kids as far away as possible, we have a sunny and dry car rider plan, and we have a wet and severe weather car rider plan. So far, these plans have been working fairly well. Should you need have suggestions or comments, please let us know. Social media is important to consider. We are very active, and that seems to be the role in today's world and how we communicate with people within our community. And we do post pictures of students involved in educational activities. One thing to keep in mind, never post a picture and identify the student in the picture by typing their name. Never link the two. But know that even without names, it is still very important not to photograph and post if you have received a form from one of your parents saying that they're not allowed to be photographed. We do have right now 3 identified students that cannot be photographed for social media, but you're always going to want to have a photo release form on every child in your class to keep you as safe as possible. Over the next couple weeks, you are going to be asked to complete a staff skills survey and inventory. This is part of our safety plan, and during a disaster, it's important for us to know how you can be an available resource in an emergency. You know, do you have first responder training? Have you been in the military? Do you know how to operate a firearm if necessary? Have you had recent CPR training? All these kinds of things can play a vital role when we try to cope with the effects of a disaster incident. So during the next couple weeks, you will receive an email giving you instructions how to complete this survey. Coronavirus was mentioned earlier, and again, the most recent and most important information you can get for our schools is at the Alabama Department of Health. Here is a link to their page so you can see the most up-to-date information. At our school, we're working extremely hard to social distance as best as possible, 6 feet apart, and we don't want to be in close contact with people for a prolonged amount of time, 15 minutes or longer. It starts to get a little bit dicey. We want to spread students' desks. We want to have kids in assigned seating and spread out. We should minimize how much we're in the hallways, and we should try to keep everything as contained as possible. Face coverings. We want everyone to try to wear a mask. The CDC recommends a mask over a face shield. A face shield seems to be a little bit more helpful in your communications. And if you're teaching phonics or things where students need to hear you, but keep in mind, this is not as safe as an option as an actual face mask. And people that are on campus are asked to wear some sort of face covering when they are in our building. And at this time, we don't allow parents in for things like lunch, or we're not doing birthday celebrations. We're doing our best to keep everything on a regularly scheduled routine as safe as possible. We want to encourage lots of hand washing, 20 seconds with soap and water, keeping it readily available. We want to use hand sanitizer, 60% more of alcohol. We want to rub them together until dry. We do not want hands on our faces, our eyes, nose, and especially our mouth area. Cleaning and disinfecting. All teachers are doing an amazing job of that right now. We want to frequently wipe down surfaces as much as possible, limit the amount of shared objects, cleaning in between classes if possible, cleaning transportation vehicles, all with disinfection products that are approved and meet EPA standards. Cleaning products should not be left out near children, and we want to make sure there's proper ventilation. If you spray something and it's meant to dry, make sure that your students are not around until it is fully dry. We want seating charts on classrooms in classrooms and on buses, so we can contact trace if necessary. We can tell kids that are sitting around them and give parents heads up. And we want to limit the movement of students within our school. That is the end of this particular safety review. I hope that it has encouraged you to think a little deeper into ways that you can keep yourself and your students safe. We really want to keep safety our first and number one priority, because without that feel of secureness, both health and safety, emergency wise, kids are unable to learn unless they're in that safe bubble of an environment. So should you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. If you need documentation, if you need any kind of plans, specific plans, let me know. I suggest watching those suggested videos, running different drills with your coworkers, and I look forward to providing you with some adaptive mindset training throughout the rest of this year. Thank you so much for your time and attention. After you've watched this video, please sign off at the front on a sign out form. Thanks again.